A massive 24 hours in rugby league, and it's, as it stands tonight, Brandon Smith won't be stood down by the NRL following alleged drug and betting charges. Thoughts on this, guys?
Well, there's two issues for mine. There's the Brandon Smith situation with the police charges that he has to front court, in September, and the NRL's made their early call on that, but I guess that you go through the process and we wait to see what happens there. The other side of this story that is very sensitive, but it relates to Victor Radley being named in the charge sheet as the person that allegedly Brandon was supplying the drugs to. So I guess, that the police have stipulated that Victor Radley has not been charged and there's no plans to charge him, but does it become a moral issue for the Roosters with his name attached to this and comments previously from Nick Politis that the club has a zero tolerance? There has to be some heavy conversations.
We'll get to that, Crawls. Firstly, I want to touch on the no stand down. So what do you guys think of the no stand down as it is right now? Well, for Brandon, that is.
Well, if we had all the information, Wayne Bennett, being an old policeman, you'd think he would know how serious the charges are. So I think if Wayne would be ahead of it. The NRL, I think they've done a pretty good job in the past of deciding whether a player gets stood down or not. So you've got to go on, because I think they've got a pretty good track record, the NRL.
Well, let's have a look at the lawyer's statement today, Brandon Smith, that is. If Mr Smith has told a person that he is playing, I don't believe that breaches the law. It's no different to him telling his family and friends that he's playing. This is a bloke who's excited to play and was confident of his abilities on the field. No allegation has been brought to my attention that he placed the bet, personally intended or directed a bet to be placed, or that any bet involving him in the game against Manly paid off in any way whatsoever. Dog.
Brandon Smith's lawyer, I spoke to him today. It's who we're referring to there. It's Paul McGurr. I had a long chat to Paul today. They are contesting both charges. He will plead not guilty at this point, albeit the drug charge they want more information about. It's not quite as easy as getting information in New South Wales because this is a Queensland matter. So Mr McGurr was quite forthright in pointing out the difficulties that Queensland Police will have in securing any proof about this betting allegation. And a couple of his points were they have to prove that the info wasn't available to the public, prove that the player tried harder to score a try than would be normal. Did the info lead to a bet? And did the player or did the person place the bet based on Brandon's information alone? 4 points that would be incredibly difficult, I would imagine, to prove in court.
Okay, a lot to unpack here, so we're going to do this methodically and carefully. On the alleged drug supply charge, the Roosters have been unwittingly dragged into this, whereby, according to a Queensland Police summons seen by the Daily Telegraph, it is alleged that Brandon Smith supplied drugs to his now former teammate Victor Radley. This stems from a golf trip to Queensland involving a number of Roosters players earlier in the year. The Roosters had a bye that week, so several players went on the trip to the sunny coast. Multiple players posted about the trip on their social media accounts at the time, but there is no suggestion whatsoever that any other Roosters players are involved in the allegations set out by Queensland Police. As far as we know, they simply attended the golf trip with Victor. Boys, thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, if we're talking about the drugs charges, so what we do know, and let's break through the bullshit here, what we do know is that the police report says Brandon was asked to help find someone to supply drugs. Again, Victor Radley's name is mentioned in the report, but there's no indication that he is guilty of anything, and the police have suggested that charges won't be laid. However, Brandon's up on a charge. He's got a long history of, look, let's say, a questionable... He's had some dramas in his life, hasn't he, Brandon? And you would have hoped that he would have learnt from this along the way. He's put himself in a very precarious position right now, and the Rabbitohs are backing him for all that they want. I've spoken to Wayne about it, and they are letting the process run. Like, you know, we live in a society where you are innocent until proven guilty. You go back to what we were talking about with the NRL stand-down policy. That's 11 years or more. You know, the jail time if you're found guilty of something like that. So it doesn't cross that line. I think the NRL's made the right call right now to let him play on.
Brandon wasn't in Queensland physically either. I think that's a very important point to make. The allegation is that he is some sort of cog in the wheel in this drug issue. And of course, his lawyer is also saying that too is incorrect. So there's plenty of work to be done before either of those charges can be proven.
South Sydney and his lawyers don't seem too worried about the betting allegation or the information given to friend about game information, right?
Well, you can tell someone, Braith. You're allowed to tell people, surely, if you're playing first grade. Wouldn't every young kid who makes his debut...
If that's all what it is, and say, I'm playing, I'm coming back in 2 weeks, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Mum,
I think it depends on what was said. You know,
if
like,
I say, hey, back the other team, I'd have a real issue with that.
or if you're not starting and then you do start and you tell the friend that back him for first try scorer, is that crossing the line?
I don't think so. Me personally, if you're backing yourself to play good, if you're backing yourself to play good, or telling someone, hey mate, back me for first try scorer, the plays are on, you know, the Tigers have had a weak left edge and that's where I'm sitting now, I'm taking over someone's spot. Personally, I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And as long as there's not a plan in place from, you know, other players joining this to help create the opportunity for Brandon to score the first try. But in fairness to the bloke, like just reading through what we know right now, he's told, regardless of who this person is, he's told a bloke that he considers a friend, I'm playing this week, back me on the first try scorer.
All right, Roosters Chairman Nick Politis outlined his views on illicit drug use earlier in the year, and this is what Nick had to say. If somebody's caught doing cocaine or leaning over snorting something, we're going to get rid of them. Our stance is zero tolerance. We are very strong on it, Trent Robinson that is, very strong on it also. While there's no suggestion of any wrongdoing by Radley or any other Roosters players, given Nick's zero tolerance policy when it comes to drug use, what has the response been from the Roosters and what could potentially happen here?
Well, the response, they've been very quiet. You know, there's been an indication that Nick has said that the club is treating this very seriously, and as they should. I'd imagine around the game right now, Braith, let's not kid ourselves, given Nick's previous comments and some that could be seen as a bit of a knock on how other clubs have handled it, there is a lot of interest out there right now to see how the Roosters handle it. Because regardless if charges are laid or not, the Roosters have unwittingly been brought into this. They've had Victor's name mentioned in the police report. They're up there away from home. There certainly has to be honest conversations, and you would imagine if they get to the bottom of it, well, I guess we wait and see what comes out of it. But yeah, I reckon around the game, people are watching with interest.
They've got a lot of heavy hitters, the Roosters, so I'm sure they are monitoring every syllable, Braith, in terms of anyone saying anything that might be remotely litigious.
Yeah.
What do you mean? No, everybody says Nick's a man of his word, so he'll back what he says.
He'll back what he says, absolutely. But no one's done that just yet.
No.
No one has been caught snorting cocaine. So, we haven't reached that situation yet, and God forbid that we do. Just on Brandon Smith, I think it's important to say too, guys, it's vitally important that no try was scored. So there was no collection of money. So, whatever allegations have been made, nothing came of it ultimately.
Do you think that the system needs fixing in terms of when naming teams, when teams are out injured? We looked at it today. We looked at the NFL protocol. It's a lot more thorough than what the NRL one is, but it's also quite similar. It's just, they
have to be in a 30-man squad or whatever they are, and you can't pick it.
I guess the challenge for rugby league at the moment is looking after the credibility of the game. And, you guys spoke about last night the betting investigation now involving the Panthers and the Bulldogs game, right? And the fact that punters out there have found out inside information about all the Panthers being stood down this weekend, and there's been a plunge on the Bulldogs, and the odds have completely switched. And this is a problem the game has at the moment. Like, over in American sport, look, it's not perfect, and there's always going to be late changes, but they do have a very clear... There has to be clarifications about player injuries. They have to keep the rival clubs, the fans, the media, everyone
Well, the game's
up to
so
date.
real. Like, if you look at Reece Walsh on the weekend, his pass, there would have been ramifications.
Of course
Someone
there would have
backed
been.
him.
Mate, that's
like, if someone's got a
another
same-game
issue.
multi, and he passes the ball, but he wouldn't have had any...
And the problem for the game is now people
So it
will say, well,
happens.
it shouldn't be the coach's responsibility, or it shouldn't be the club's responsibility to let their opposition know of injuries that they may have or weaknesses that may have in their team. But the problem with the game at the moment is that the NRL is now taking, I think it's around
money?
$50 million annually from wagering agreements, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to take that money, surely we've got to have a little bit more transparency there, and you've got
With
to look
what?
after the
With-
integrity of the game when it
With
comes
what,
to
the
injuries and
Yeah,
all that sort of
injuries?
stuff.
So if you're on an injured list, you can't play that
Yeah,
week,
because
no
look,
matter what.
we've
Yep.
jumped into bed with the betting agencies,
Yep.
so surely you've got to put systems in place. Like, I understand why the coaches may not want it, but if you want to take the money, you've got to
Yep.
do it.
One thing I was thinking today is maybe name the team. Like, it's an hour before the game.
Yeah.
You've got to name the team. Name it the day before. And then have a 19th man if there's an injury in the warm-up. Because all you're really covering for...
Well, they
is
do have a
injury.
19th.
Yeah, I know.
18th
Whatever it
man
may
there.
be. Carry an
Yeah.
extra one
Yep.
even. But name the team, 24 to 48 hours before the game. So if there are
Well,
players...
they know who's playing on Tuesday.
They do,
really,
right.
don't
But they don't always tell us. Like, remember a few weeks ago, Lachlan Galvin had his hand injury, and Gus was on another program, and he gave no clear indication. And that's the thing out there, and yet people are betting on these
I've run out on the
teams
field
straight
and-
after the previous week.
I've been named to start and went and sat on the bench.
Yes.
And Broncos took a fine.
That 4 o'clock Tuesday team announcement, Braith, you're spot on there. That's very antiquated, that goes right back to the days when we had Big League. It was at 4 o'clock, so the Big
right.
League program could come out on the Wednesday. It was the only reason we've had 4 o'clock Tuesday, and we've had it ever since. The Big League's long gone.
Yeah.
But you're right. What is the reason now for Tuesday?
So what's the happy medium then?
Why can't we put it back a bit later in the week?
Yeah.
But going back to the clarity around injuries and that, like that, they're betting on this Bulldogs-Panthers game way before the teams are even named. So again, you've got to go back, and you're never going to have a perfect system, but you've got to have something better than what we've got
And what
at
it
the
does
moment.
tell you too is that a few players in and amongst all of that have done what Brendan Smith has done and told their mates information that should they or shouldn't have, but they did. You know what I mean? So it happens.
And this is like, not just in the NRL, but even some of the lower grades, there's been all these rumours for years and years and years about people getting early information.